But I will, yeah, I'm going to take control for just a little bit. Thank you guys for starting it for me. Because I don't know why my computer just decided, my computer is a she. I anthropomorphize, right? It didn't come out quite the way I want, but I, all of my things are she's, and she is being a brat, and so thank you to the gentleman. Yes, if you didn't see Will, he's in the back here. He's golfing in the back. You know, for those of you who have been joining us, Will, it's kind of like instead of where's Waldo, it's where's Will. So he's there in the background with us today. But thank you for joining us on Club Copilot. Now, we like to start it off with a little bit of fun. So Carlos, I know I asked Copilot this question, but Carlos, how many of these movies, these golf movies, have you seen? Anybody actually? Do we agree with Copilot? Because this is what Copilot gave me as the best golf movies. What would you say, Carlos Fernandez?
I've seen four of them, four out of the six,
All
and
right,
they're
which ones have you seen there?
the first four.
Okay.
Caddyshack, yeah, Caddyshack is awesome. Legend of Bagger Vance is great too. Tin Cup, I'm a huge Kevin Costner fan. I don't know why, but I think he's awesome. And Happy Gilmore, you just got to be in the right mood. But yes, I think it's a good one.
Yeah. Okay, we've got a lot of people. Abby Roberts, I am ashamed. I am ashamed at you, Abby Roberts. None. I'm making fun of her because she's my friend, but none, Abby? Really?
So she
Get on.
gets the shame.
Get. There you go. Get
The
on it.
shame gift.
First of all, I mean, I feel like Caddyshack, I'm sure somebody out there probably wants to argue, but Caddyshack is probably the most classic. I mean, I'm not sure I'm not sure it actually gets better than Caddyshack when we're talking golf movies. So, I mean, yes, you've got if you like golf at all or any of those individuals, and then yeah, I'd be honest, Happy Gilmore, I'm a fan. I'm a huge fan, and yes, it's got a sequel coming. I know Travis Kelce is in the sequel. So any Swifties like myself that are out there, you're gonna probably need to hit that one up. So
Hey
there
Heather,
you
just a
go.
pro tip. I know I've mentioned this before, but I'm going to say it one more time. So I ask these types of questions all the time to Copilot, like what movies are considered to be the best golf movies of all time, right? But I always follow it up with I always ask, why do you think it's the best? Like I'm always interested in learning the reasoning for why those were chosen, or even when I rank them, sometimes I'll say like rank them for me and then explain your ranking to see if it can change my mind. So yeah, sorry, just a little pro tip there for prompting because I like your prompt.
I like that aspect. I would be curious as to the reasoning as well. So just another, yeah, of course, I can bring Taylor Swift into any any conversation. And I'll do just one more quick one because what would it be if Heather also did not bring up Ohio State? But who's the most famous golfer from the Ohio State University? That is our dear friend Jack Nicklaus. And so, of course, I also had to have Copilot make Heather as a golfer. Again, probably as close as I'm going to be getting to the golf course anytime soon. But I'm excited. I don't know if any of my Ohio State friends are on here. I live in the Atlanta area, but I get to go up with Dwayne. Dwayne and I will be at the Ohio State University at the end of this week. So I'm very pumped because that means I get to pack all my scarlet and gray. And yeah, it's gonna be a good time. So what's on the agenda today? Carlos, you want to tell us what's on the agenda?
I will gladly read from this slide. Absolutely happy to do that, but I can't get past. Uh, I'm gonna go on a limb and say that this is Will, and this is hilarious, Will. If this is you, but if it's not, it is. It looks like your first picture there that you had in the first shot. All right, so we're gonna talk about
That's me.
what's new with. There you go. What's new with Copilot? There were some really, really nice announcements. I believe we just had. I don't believe. I know we just had a 50th birthday, which is kind of cool. Um, in there. I have not had my 50th birthday, but Microsoft has had its 50th birthday. We're going to talk about the feature of the month, some nice hot tips. Heather's always full of tips, so I love it. And then we'll talk about what's next, especially from an upcoming call. And another friendly reminder that we're actually having two Club Copilot calls as well, right? So I think we had a good time on the last one. A lot of great Q&A questions and people asking back and forth, how do you do this? What do you think about this? So just great dialogue. So in case you missed it, make sure you join the next one. We're doing twice a month just based off of feedback and wanting more time.
Yeah, and we're gonna be Emily, sometimes it helps. I see your message. Sometimes it helps if you leave and come back. If you're not seeing the presentation. I don't want you to leave us, but I want you to leave and come back. We're gonna fly through the first part because we could not be more excited that we actually have a product manager here to talk about Excel. And so we want to give her as much time as possible. So we're going to fly through this. And for Jose laughing at Hecox, so I had changed it to Hot Tips with Heather, but Hecox, for those that are unaware, that is my alias here at Microsoft, HECOX. You can reach me if you email that. And I changed it back to Hecox because I just like it. So I changed it back to Hot Tips with Hecox. So we'll fly through. Just for those of you brand new to us, this is meeting one. The purpose of Club Copilot is end user. This is about you. Both of our meetings are about you. This particular one is about end user information, training, news and updates. We always pick a feature. It's not going to be technical. We're not getting into that. We'll talk about that. Meeting two is where if you want to ask those technical questions, you join us on meeting two. March recap for those of you that were not with us in March. We do have our things now. The first meeting of the month where we do this kind of session, we're going to put those on YouTube. The second one, we are not. We want to keep people's questions and comments and whatnot. We want to just keep that we'll keep that to us. So you guys don't have to worry. You can openly share. We're not going to put that up on YouTube, but stop by. Those are some great links that you may want to keep your eyes on. But Dwayne, you are welcome to take over because I think you're talking to us about what's new with Copilot.
Yep, just a couple of quick things. Um, if you didn't notice or see or hear or read about the news 2 weeks ago, I think it was now. Time is messed up for me. Apologies if it was shorter than that. There are new and updated agent consumption rates. I linked to the Copilot blog as well as the technical nerdy documentation there that will take you to these new rates. But one of the big ones is this one here used to be 30 and now it's 10. So that's a 3x decrease, which is pretty amazing. So check out those. And of course, you'll get a copy of the slides after we're done. Also, there's a AI Skills Fest happening for the next April 8th through May 28th that kicked off today. And there was a pretty interesting session. If you remember Jethro, he was on here a few months ago. He covered agents. They did a speed run of building 6 agents in 60 minutes. So I thought that would be a really fun one to share. You'll see the recording is down there at the bottom left. And if you go to the AI Skills Fest homepage, you'll see a live stream of whatever they're currently presenting. But there is a registration process. And Carlos, there's some sort of like Guinness World Record thing happening tied to that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's right now what they're doing is funny because I'm at an AI event. I'm sitting on the floor over here, but there's an AI event about 200 yards that way, which is I'm in Atlanta right now, and we have just over 5,000, 6,000, 5 to 6,000 customers that are just here right now learning all things about Copilot, Studio, Power Plat, Dynamics, tons of different partners. And the whole thing around AI skills is we're trying to go for a world record. Definitely check it out. We'll put in, I think the link here is already there, but you can actually sign up to just go and take some of these courses and get educated on some of our AI skills. I think this is absolutely awesome. And I'm going to actually add one more thing here because I did not look at this slide before you showed it. OV is absolutely amazing, by the way. I had a really cool conversation with him the other day where I believe he's from Spain, if I remember correctly. But we kind of connected through LinkedIn and we just started geeking out, sharing. I shared like a ton of different agents that I was working on with him, and he shared a ton of agents back with me. Just absolute brilliant. So if you guys do not know who OB is, obviously Jerry's amazing too, and so is Jethro. We all know that. But check him out. Definitely look him up on LinkedIn. He's amazing.
Yeah, definitely a
Sorry.
session that you'll want to check out. I saw some
Yeah.
badges in the chat from some of the achievements there. So thanks y'all for playing along. We kept, whoops, I didn't realize we had music on this slide. Apologies.
I
We
was
are,
digging it.
How
We
dare you stop my intro
yeah,
music?
okay,
oh,
so I will say we had a little fun on MS Office Hours. Now, I have not heard this song. Okay, I guess we're just listening.
sorry, did I pause it for everybody there?
You did, and I think
Oh.
we need to listen. Let's just go. Just do it.
What? It's like an ode to Excel.
Don't worry, we're not doing the whole song.
Okay, that was really good. Okay.
It fades out after a minute, so we're almost done.
Okay.
So
You,
we Dwayne, you unfortunately missed. On Thursday, we debuted the SharePoint Advanced Management song. I have decided that we are creating a full album of songs about Microsoft products. And I've not heard this one. This one's brand new. That was the first one I've heard. So look at Tyler coming in with the pun in the chat. Excelevator music. That was terrible drums. But Will, since you were amazing and you brought us this amazing speaker, why don't you go ahead and do the intro and then we'll all just shut up and let her shine.
Sure. So I'd like to introduce you to Casey Lemson. She is our Excel expert this week, not year. She's going to be doing a nice demo for us, though. If you've seen any of Dwayne or I's demos or Carlos's demos of Excel, she's going to blow us all out of the water. So really looking forward to seeing what she's going to do for us here today. Casey, all yours.
No pressure. Um, anyway, thank you all for having me. This is quite a fun group. This is not a typical call that I have, meetings throughout the day. So this has got a little bit of a different vibe. I appreciate it. So I'm going to do what I honestly call a speed run, even though it was used a few minutes ago, through a left to right breadth of possibilities. The goal with this content is to give you like a sample platter, a tasting menu of possibilities. Some of the examples might resonate for you, others may not. My goal is to do that left to right kind of quick run. So to start with, I like to talk about who is Excel Copilot for. Obviously, we're all a part of this industry, and we're all living in a world that this industry exists. And the rate of change here is incredibly fast. Every product's coming out with different kinds of generative AI. So what does it mean in the context of Excel? So I like to start by looking at Excel itself outside of Copilot, and I use the tabs on the ribbon. It's just a high-level way of looking at it. So at a very high level, Copilot Excel is best fit for someone who's familiar with Excel in general. They use it regularly. But being comfortable or familiar with Excel doesn't mean someone takes advantage of rich functionality, because Excel is this kitchen sink of amazing functionality built up over decades. Actually, I think we're having our 40th anniversary this year. And it can be kind of hard to take advantage of very much. Any one user might only scratch the surface of the possibilities. So, the Home tab, there's a set of Excel customers who work in Excel all the time, but all they really do is enter data, cell fill color, column width. Maybe they click the auto sum button. The Insert tab, it's where you add pivot tables and charts. Or the Formulas tab, there's over 350 different formulas in Excel. Incredible variety, no matter how much of an expert you are. I don't think there's a single person who has all of those memorized. And then, of course, on the Data tab, there's so many different ways to get data into Excel. So what I'm going to walk through today is that kind of speed run, left, right, sample platter. And you will see kind of this legend show up on the slides of categories of functionality. They map at a super high level to some different tabs on the ribbon. It's just a loose framework to give you the gist of it, not like a really specific thing. So what I'm going to go through is not just the capabilities, but different ways to take advantage of them. Sometimes it's about writing your own prompt, and sometimes it's through other UI surfaces. So starting in Excel, yes, as someone said, the autosave limitation. So that is a limitation that is specific to Excel. There's reasons for it, but I'm not going to go into it. Just rest assured, it wasn't an accident. It was something we did have to make that choice intentionally. But in order to use Copilot in Excel, the file has to be saved to either OneDrive or SharePoint, and has to have autosave enabled. In the longer run, I do expect us to change that limitation, but it is what it is for right now. In the middle, we also talk about kind of tabular data. And what we mean by that is for most of Excel Copilot capabilities, it works best when your data is kind of looks and feels like a table. It has columns, it has rows, there's headers at the top. There's not a lot of blank rows and columns in the middle. There's exceptions to this, but just as a general rule. And then in general, you can either start with the Copilot icon on the ribbon, or there's some new entry points that have been rolling out throughout the rest of Experience, which I will cover momentarily. First thing, before I go into the specific examples, some general tips on writing prompts. So take this data set over here. It's for a water bill. Okay, pretty standard looking data set for Excel. Month, water usage, the amount billed. One of the things we like to say is to be specific and break down tasks. So if you ask Copilot to analyze this data, it's going to make its best guess about what you want, and it might get that wrong. But if you say specifically, show the water usage over time, the model is learning based on what you say to figure out what to do. So show implies something graphical. Oh, you want to see water usage, so it tells you, oh, that's column B. Over time, so it knows to do that and plot it against the axis of the month. So just a high-level example to give you the gist. Another prompt writing tip is the idea of using multi-turn. So the idea of having a conversation with software is like a shift in a mindset, and I'm still on this journey myself. We've had toolbars and menus and then, the ribbon for decades. And that's been the way that all software products, particularly productivity products, have generally worked. But these days, the idea of an open input box where you just write things and see what it says, it's such a different user experience. So we would like to remind people there is multi-turn. And what I mean by that is you'll see the first prompt I wrote, how many sales were there? So it's looking at a data set, it gives me an answer. But it turns out I didn't want to know exactly that number. I wanted to see it as a pie chart. So I used multi-turn to follow up and say, hey, can you show that as a pie chart? So it's using that conversation history to figure out what you want in that context. Another tip is because it's using the conversation history, sometimes what you might find is you're having a really long conversation and you're seeing something in the recent responses that isn't from something recently, it's from a little earlier in your conversation. So if you ever want to start fresh, you can go create a new chat from the chat history. So high-level tips just to get folks started. I mentioned earlier there's entry points from the ribbon to get to the chat pane, or we also recently started rolling out this new UI in the Windows and the web client, which gives you kind of access to one-click high-level prompts. It comes with a setting so you can control the behavior. You can either say, hide until I reopen this document, which temporarily hides it, or under file options, there's a setting to more long-term control it. And the idea of this is to give you access to one-shot prompts that give you an idea of the breadth of capabilities. When you run these prompts, most of the time, it'll open the Copilot chat pane and run the prompt there, and the results that come back will be contextual to your data. So one thing I recommend to folks who are just getting started with Copilot in Excel and you're kicking the tires, open a data set you look at all the time and try every one of these prompts and see what Copilot comes up with. And that'll give you kind of an interesting left to right view. And in particular, every time there is an answer from Copilot, you'll see thumbs up and thumbs down. I highly, highly, highly encourage anyone to use those to send them to us. I'm sure you've heard a lot of people at Microsoft say, send us feedback. We look at it all. And sometimes it can feel like a black hole. I will tell you, in the case of Copilot, that is not the case. We are still learning and evolving and kind of shaping the product as we learn from feedback and our own experiences. And I literally start my day by reviewing the thumbs up and thumbs down that were submitted in the previous day and just kind of seeing what are our customers doing, what are they trying, what's working, what's not. And that feedback is constantly useful. So highly, highly recommend it. So now getting into the specific speed run, starting with formula explanation. So I have a very simple data set. You'll see the purple formulas. That's kind of the legend here. Formulas is a really key part of Excel. There's over 350 of them. And this is a case where the language model that powers Copilot can be a huge time saver and help. So I'm using a data set here of 4th grade math, which is kind of fun in a group of educators. This icon that I'm referring to, we call it the skittle internally just for fun. When you have your cell selection on a cell that has a formula in it, you click on the skittle and it'll have a menu item that says explain this formula. When you click on that, it's going to return the explanation of the formula. Now, I intentionally used simple data sets for most of this deck, because if you've ever worked in Excel and you open someone else's Excel workbook, and that the mental process you have to go through to be like, whoa, how did they organize their data? And it's, I don't want folks who are seeing this presentation to be thinking about the data. I want them to be thinking about the capabilities. So I intentionally use simplified content to illustrate it. But of course, this works with far more advanced capabilities. So here we've got a formula explanation. Yay, that's pretty basic. And again, very simple idea of a formula, but you could also ask in the chat pane. So what does this formula do? And you just write out what the formula does. You can also ask, like, what does this function do? And a lot of other capabilities. I'll go through that in a bit. So now to showcase an example on a little more complicated formula, this is from the Excel World Championship a few years ago. And if you weren't aware, yes, there's an Excel World Championship competition. So as you can see from the formula bar, this is a pretty complex formula. It's using a bunch of different functions like let, Unicode, text join, and that same entry point. When you select a cell that has a formula in it, has explained this formula, but in this case, it's a really complicated formula, so there's a really long scroll bar. So again, similarly, you could ask for a formula explanation in the chat pane, and you could get a detailed answer. Or if you first start on the grid, you can follow up later with Chat with Copilot in the pane. And this could be useful because if you think about the multi-turn tip, like let's say the first explanation that comes back, it's really complicated and messy. And then you're like, explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old. That can be a way to kind of work with the language model to be like, what you just said didn't make sense to me, break it down. And I've done this before in various demos when I first get the formula explanation, okay, it makes sense. And then I say, explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old. And the examples are like using boxes of crayons and stuff. It's actually kind of fun. So continuing on this theme, going back to the 4th grade math data set. Now, in this case, my cell selection is on a cell that has a formula error. This is a slightly different experience. The error is showing up because, of course, you can't divide TBD by 7. Again, simplified data set, but it's illustrating a real-world concept. In numeric data, someone might be using TBD or a string to indicate they're still working on the data entry, but if you have formulas expecting numeric results, you might see a pound value error. So in this case, the menu says, explain this error and suggest a fix. When we click on it, it opens the chat pane and injects that prompt you see at the top, explain and suggest a fix for this error in this formula. And it gives you kind of a natural language answer, says, oh, this occurs when this happens. Here is something you can copy paste and explaining why it will fix that. The other thing I like to call attention to here is these LLM-powered, what we refer to as suggestion pills at the bottom. They are following up with context from your initial prompt, and they can give you ideas of things to ask, things to try. So if you weren't familiar with what the if error function does, it has the suggestion pill. Can you explain that? So again, having a conversation is like this new mindset, and it takes a while to figure that out. So staring at a blank input box is hard. So these are just a few simple examples where you can, see a menu item and get an answer. Overall, our goal is to take Copilot value out of the chat pane so that you don't have to think about it and find the right place to bring it into your flow as part of your user experience. We're still fairly early on that journey. And again, keeping up with the pace of change in the industry and all that is a bit. But this is where we are right now. So now explaining and fixing existing formulas is one thing, but writing your own, different thing entirely. And this is another case where the power of the language model really shines. So the underlying model has been trained on decades of Excel content, people asking questions about how to write formulas and getting answers. So here's a simple data set with a list of dates. As anyone who's worked in Excel a lot knows, it is super fun to work with dates in Excel. Yes, we love the jokes. And if you want to know how to write a formula to calculate the day of the week, you could ask Copilot in the chat pane. So I just said, what's the formula to calculate day of the week? And it gives me a version here. Oh, you can use this function and do it. A tip I like to call out here is using how, why, and what questions about writing formulas is a really useful way to work with the model. It kind of gives it a guideline of what are you trying to do? So what's the formula for? Or how do I write a formula that? Think of it as someone, if you had a coworker down the hall and you wanted to, and they were an Excel expert and you wanted to ask them questions, how would you phrase a question to them? But that's how you could do it if you were writing your own prompt. And no, I cannot see the chat other than the fact that you guys are having fun, so enjoy. Another thing you might do, if you're anything like me, is you might be working hard and not smart. Let's say you're not even aware that there is a formula to do the thing you're trying to do, and you just start writing in the answers yourself. So in this case, I started writing in that day of the week column, and I filled out Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday, and then this pop-up shows up. And now what you're seeing here in this experience is Copilot has detected a pattern you're writing. It's found that there's a formula that seems to match this pattern, and it's suggesting it to you. Now, if I click on that show formula, it's going to show me the exact formula that it has. And the other thing you'll see here is what we call ghost text. So this light gray font color in that column, it gives you a preview of what it will look like on your content to give you confidence that this is the right formula, this is what you want. If you're familiar with the flash fill feature in Excel, which we first released in 2013, it's a similar UI pattern, but of course, in this case, it's Copilot providing access to a breadth of capabilities. Now, if you don't want that formula, just keep typing, the pattern will change, the dialog will go away. But if you do, it just saved you a ton of time. So continuing on the same theme, say you have a data set with your sales data, number of units sold, price per unit, revenue. This is basic stuff for Excel. And again, this is a very intentionally simplified example. Now, you can, of course, write your own prompt in chat. So I gave two different examples here. How do I write a formula to multiply units sold by price per unit? And how do I multiply what's in column A by what's in column B? And so that's like a thing I would like to call out here is you can tell Copilot where is the data that you want to refer to by column headers, column letters, or worksheet names. And so knowing just enough about how Excel works and the names and things like that can be a useful way to kind of point Copilot in Excel at the direction of what you're trying to do. But then once again, you could do it yourself in chat. Or let's say you start working hard, not smart, and you're just doing the math yourself and figuring it out. So 3 times 150 is 450, and 5 times 2 is 10. And at some point, Copilot will detect the pattern, and it has a formula. So when I click on Show Formula, it again shows, yep, it came up with the same general formula, but it again just saved me a ton of time. So now one last example along this pattern. Say you have a data set with names in last comma first format, especially for folks who work in EDU. I can imagine that you're often working with student names and different populations coming in, coming out, and merging different data sets and getting them to work consistently. It's a really, really common scenario. So in this case, I have an employee name column that is last comma first, and I want to turn it into first space last because that's easier for me to read. So again, I can go into chat and I can say add a column to the left of employee name that shows the names in first space last format. So a few things going on here. One is I asked for a column with the formula, which is different than a formula that does something. So the concept of a formula column, when you have that tabular data, is it will create the entire column for you and give you one button to click insert it. So it comes back, it explains, oh, here's what it's doing. It's reformatting the employee name. And then if you click insert, it will go there. However, if you start typing out the names yourself, Copilot will also detect this pattern, and it recognizes that there's a formulaic way to convert the employee name to this different format. And again, you can click to see what the formula is, and you can see it has the same formula in this case that it came up with when I tried it in chat, but this happened as part of the user flow when they were working with their data in Excel. So shifting gears a little, still on the formulas theme, the purple in the corner, I mentioned converting a date into a different format a few slides ago. This is the reason I like to make jokes about dates in Excel is because it's such a common thing. And there are so many different formats that you could do and ways to kind of convert and look at the data. So I want to show a few different examples of that. So I have a very simple launch date column. And let's say I want to pull it out for which calendar year is it, because that way I can do sorting, filtering, or I might want to show it in a pivot chart or something differently. So having it pulled out into a different column is helpful for those purposes. So very simple prompt, add a column that shows the calendar year. Okay. Another example is add a formula column to the right of the calendar year that shows the fiscal quarter for some businesses and universities. That would be how they might want to do it. And also notice that I said put it to the right. By default, Copilot, when it's inserted columns, it's going to stick it on the right side of where you are, but you can say put it to the left, put it to the left of column D, put it to the left of calendar year, things like that. And then, of course, the same example with add a column with a formula that shows the day of the week. And when you see all of these different what we call answer cards, they tell you what the formula is, they give you a natural language explanation of it, and they give you a preview of what the first 5 rows would say so that you can confirm that that's the formula that you wanted. And again, if it's not the formula you wanted, use multi-turn, have that conversation, correct it. So kind of still in formulas, but now shifting gears a little bit, looking at text. So extracting information from that previous slide where it's showing dates and putting it a different way, it is very, very common for folks to have a column with a lot of text in it, and they want to extract a subset of the text. We often, as humans, we use different types of syntax for, tracking things. Here I have a list of classes in university, and you'll see these kind of keywords that are in brackets like physics on Friday, bio on Wednesday, etc. So in this case, if I want to create this data set so I can work with it more easily in Excel, I can ask Copilot to extract the text from the second set of brackets in class details. You notice I just said the second set of brackets, but when it inserts that column, it figured out to name the column class day. And this is a really small but important example of the power of a language model in Excel. I didn't say create a class day column. I said second, the text in the second set of brackets. That's how a language model can work with your data in Excel. Excel is not just math and numbers, of course it is, but text is such a huge part of it, and language is a huge part of working with a model to get what you want. Another common scenario is delimited text. So canonical scenario here would be surveys. So if you send out a survey for this potluck and you need RSVPs and you're looking for what kind of dish are you going to bring, and you want to make sure you're having a breadth of desserts, of course, and also, I suppose, main course and appetizers. So you want to split that information out into separate columns so you can work with it and consume it more easily. Now, if you're someone who's familiar writing formulas, like the formula to convert this into separate columns, it's not too hard. But like if I were to do that, I'm kind of an intermediate user of Excel. It would take me, 10, 15 minutes. I have to look up the syntax, remember how to do it, test it. And it's just not something I do all the time, so it might take me a little while. But in this case, all I had to do was say create new yes, no columns for each value in the potluck dish column as indicated by the semicolon separator. And so again, that answer card comes back with a preview. It shows me what the 3 columns are it's going to create, gives me a preview of the formula, and then a preview of the results. And when I click to insert the columns, I now have separate formula columns with the right yes, no values. Now, if this were connected to an actual form survey that was sent out and new responses came in, then the potluck dish column would update, and of course the formula would also. So another example of formulas I like to talk about is XLOOKUP. So if you're maybe like me, you're like an intermediate user, but you just kind of dabble in formulas, like XLOOKUP sometimes might seem like a really intimidating, powerful formula, and it can be powerful. Linking information across worksheets or across different data ranges is what it's useful for. So with Copilot, though, you don't have to be an expert with using XLOOKUP to use it. So in this example, this is my Taylor Swift reference data set. I took her Eras tour dates and locations, and then I made up a bunch of other sample data about, ticket sales and revenue. So that's where the Swiftie reference is from. But here I have, let's pretend I'm the business manager for a concert musician who recently had a world tour. And I have the results from the finance team about concert ticket sales, and I'm working in that. But you'll see that it's in currency codes from each of the regional managers and regional locations. So in order to kind of look at this data from a business across, I need to convert it all into the same currency. So I asked Copilot separately to create this table I have in column I and J about the currency exchange rates. And then I asked with a single prompt, I said, add a column that shows the revenue in USD, look up the exchange rates in column J. Again, it comes back with a natural language answer. You also see it says looking at A1 to F155, it's telling you what it's detecting as the range. So that's a useful signal to look at. It's going to add a revenue in USD column. And when I add it there, you can see column G. Now, in this case, I intentionally had the currency code conversion table have USD in it because it's a 1-to-1 ratio. And that helps me validate that the formula did the right thing because the rows that are in USD already have the same value as revenue compared to revenue in USD. So this is a case of the type of formula. This would have taken me, I don't know. I'm not sure I could have written this in a short amount of time. I probably would have had to ask someone or go look something up online. But with a single natural language prompt, it did it for me. And that kind of gives me access to more powerful functionality, builds my confidence in taking advantage of Excel. So think about, there's a reason I start with formulas, because the power of a language model applied to Excel is really, really useful in this case. But I'm about to switch gears from formulas to coloring. And specifically conditional formatting. So self-fill color is one of the top used feature across all of Excel. Over half of Excel customers use it every month. And it has high, what we call local retention, which means customers are using it again and again in the same session. And like having watched a million usability studies, I know what's happening is people are using color to help their human brains understand and work with data, red, yellow, green, or other types of color classification systems. And if you know how to use conditional formatting, it can be a really powerful capability to dynamically update the color based on certain conditions. But it is used by far less than half of our customers a month. And anyone who's used conditional formatting probably can guess why, because the user experience for it, it's got a lot of functionality and a lot of clicks, and it can be a little overwhelming. So this is another case where the power of the language model is really helpful. So here I have this sample data set. It's a list of accounts I'm tracking. Oh, we have some meeting dates and information from each of these accounts. But I'm going through a data entry process and updating things. So I need to keep track of where I haven't completed my data entry. And so what I can say here is 4 words: highlight, empty, values, yellow. And what it does is it found my data range, A1 to F13. It knows what empty means, and it found cell values that are blank, and I told it yellow. And so it gives me a preview of what's going to do. When I click the apply button, it has now highlighted those 4 cells that were blank. And again, this is a dynamic coloring. So if some of the content were deleted, that cell would suddenly start showing up yellow. So building on the same, another scenario that's possible in conditional formatting that Copilot can also take care of and make it easier for you to use is duplicate values. So that customer meeting date column is when I'm having many hour meetings with different customers. And I do not want 2 of those meetings to happen on the same day. So I asked Copilot to highlight duplicates in customer meeting date red. So a few different things going on here. One is I said duplicates, not empty. Second is I told it to look at a specific column instead of the whole range. And I told it the color red. So it did that for me here. So now the last example in this space is it's really common to use separate columns to keep track of metadata, especially when you're doing data entry or tracking information, especially if a lot of different people tracking information, like maybe every row has a different person who's in charge of it. So they have to kind of flip it from yes to no, or et cetera, as things go on. And, when that starts out, the data set's, oh, it's nice and easy. I got a yes, I know, I can do that. But as you get more and more rows or more columns, like your eyes blur over and it kind of the yes becomes no and it's hard to tell. So this is another case where color can be really useful. So I said highlight cells with yes, in quotes, green. And in this case, it's looking for the value of the cell, not just empty, not just duplicate, but actual text inside the value. And it gives me a really quick way to preview that and make sure it's doing the right thing. So next up. So earlier I referenced how often when I'm trying to remember how to do something in Excel, I might browse the help file or look online, or at my age, I'm not really a big video person, but if I'm forced to, I will watch a video about how to do something. And that's just kind of been, I've been an Excel user for 30 years. I grew up in Lotus 1-2-3 and switched to Excel in the 90s. But I still have to look things up because, again, it's such a rich product. It has so much functionality. It can be a bit much. So one of the things that I like to highlight is what's known as the Excel Chat Helper feature, or what I call it is the Excel Encyclopedia. When I'm using Excel to create things, sometimes I feel so smart, but sometimes the process of figuring out how to use the functionality to do what I want doesn't make me feel so smart. And so I'm often looking information up to kind of figure out how to do things. So in this case, you could do that right inside Copilot. And I have a bunch of different examples here. And it's funny actually to talk to this crowd because I did a version of this presentation a few months ago to a different group. and included some educators. And I remember one of them saying after I'd gone through this section, I'm no longer going to be the Excel wizard on campus because now people can just ask Copilot, which was pretty fun. So a few different examples here. One is I say, what are some advanced keyboard shortcuts in Excel that most people don't know about? So again, think about this through the language model. It's not what are all the keyboard shortcuts, and it's not browsing help documentation with like 100 or 200 different shortcuts. I just was curious about what are ones that people don't know about. I actually shared this screenshot internally in the product team, and someone who's worked in Excel for 10 years was like, I didn't know about Control-Shift-U to expand the formula bar. And I'm like, hey, pretty cool. Also think of it as whatever you're trying to do. If you like to use the keyboard, you could say, what are keyboard shortcuts related to date formatting or cell formatting or whatever you want? Because again, think about the power of the language model. So another example is, let's say you have something you're trying to accomplish. You have a goal in Excel and you're not sure how to do it. Tell Copilot what you're trying to do, explain the constraints, and see what it says. So I said, I'm trying to compare two data sets with duplicates. I want to extract data from address list 1 that is not present in the other address list, and the lists are different sizes. So how do I do that? So it walks me through 3 different steps. It gives me a little overview, it gives me a formula, and it explains where to put that formula and how to take advantage of it. Very useful. Last example here is how can I prevent other people from incorrectly adding an address in the wrong format on my sheet? Because when you have multiple people working the same workbook, of course, if they change the syntax of how they enter it, it can make it harder to use sorting and filtering. So this then walks you how to use the data validation feature to create a drop-down list with pre-existing values. Continuing on the theme, another thing I like to talk about is terminology. So lots of people use Excel for math, and you can say, how can I calculate standard deviation in Excel? And there's 2 different formulas in Excel. Copilot will explain this to you. That's great. But what if it might have been a few years since you were in that type of math class and you wanted to remember what standard deviation meant? Or you wanted to look up other terminology related to that. Think about if you're looking at someone else's workbook and you're not quite following along with terminology they use, you can just ask Copilot about that, whether or not it has anything to do with Excel specifically. And this Excel chat helper capability will give you access to that information. So here's the terminology definition of standard deviation. You could also ask, like, how is standard deviation useful? Why would I want to know it? Is it useful in this case? So again, that conversational idea is, it's a mindset shift, but once you can kind of get across that, oh my goodness, the things you can take advantage of. And last but not least in this category, I like to say, ask Copilot what's try in Copilot. So I have 2 examples here. One is you'll see this prompt that says, teach me something else about Excel in a few words and show me how I can use it on this data. Now that's a lot of different words, and let me explain how this happened. We actually started with the prompt, teach me something about Excel. And what we found was that it was repeating the answer a lot if you ran it on the same data set. So we said, teach me something else about Excel. And then it started providing a variety of answers. Second is the answers were kind of wordy and we were tired of reading it. So we're like, in a few words. That was great. And then third, not all of the times did it kind of show an example relevant to the data. So I said, and show me how I could use it. And once we kind of iterated on the prompt to get what we wanted, we have this useful prompt, which is like a light way to just kind of get an idea of a feature in Excel, a function, a capability that you may not have known about that's relevant to your specific data, because it's not just the language model in general, it's the context of your data and helping you take advantage of Excel on top of that data. Another example is this one. If you don't know where to start, you're like, well, I don't know what to ask. Just ask Copilot what are some ideas and what to ask. So I said, can you give me an example of 3 prompts to try in Excel Copilot on this data? One should be about creating a chart, another about adding a formula column, and the third about conditional formatting. So in this case, it looked at the data, we kind of figured out some context from the data, it gave me 3 different ideas. Now, not all of these ideas might have been useful to me, but that's okay. If you're just trying to explore it, kick the tires, get a sense of the capabilities, this can be a useful way to do that. So now shifting gears into creating content. This is where the Tower of London came up that I was saying earlier. Give me a sample table with a proposed itinerary for a 7-day trip to London with a suggested activity that's a popular tourist destination within 10 miles of London Tower. Again, lots of words there, and all of those words are useful. I started with, give me a sample itinerary for London, and it had me go traveling, distances that were really long. So I had said, oh, make it within 10 miles of London Tower, and I wanted to see specific popular tourist destinations just for brainstorming and trip planning for a trip to the UK. The words here that are really important is give me a sample table or a template. So that's your clue to the model. It says you want this kind of tabular data to work with. You want to bring that into Excel. Another example that I did not realize until creating this content a few months ago that I shared with a different group of people is I needed to create demo content to demonstrate Excel Copilot. So I used Copilot to generate the content. And then I thought that was a really niche scenario that would maybe only be relevant to folks like, who do the work I do. But I ended up presenting it to folks who work in documentation and training. And they were like, this is going to change our lives because they're constantly creating content for the purposes of writing material to train and educate others. And also, it's not just the content itself, but think about generating formulas to generate the content. Like if you have survey verbatim, like in this slide I'll show in a minute, survey verbatims, and every time I open this demo workbook and want to take a screenshot, I want it to have recent dates on it. Well, you can have Copilot write a formula that shows date in the last 2 weeks so that every time you open it, it's refreshed and up to date, just as an idea. Another thing I like to highlight here is the idea of asking for a certain number of columns. So I said, create a template with at least 8 columns for things I might need to keep track of for running a software project. So think of Copilot as your ideation tool. It helps you do your work, think about how to do the work, and asking for at least X columns is a way of signaling the complexity level that you want. You may not want all these columns, that's fine. But if it helps you think about what you want and like marinate on the idea, and it might give you ideas and other things to do, and then you can start from that and go from there. So now, like I said, I use these tips to create content. This is an example of what I mean. I had analytics, text analytics. So I like to highlight, first, let me talk about the capability, then how I got there. So first, people think of Excel as about math and numbers, of course, but text is a huge part of it. And the canonical scenario for text is survey verbatims. If you haven't used our forms integration, you create a form, send it out to people as they answer it on whatever client they're using. That is then linked to an Excel workbook that is automatically kept up to date with people's forms answers. So you can say, as those survey verbatims come in this case, it was HR onboarding survey. As the verbatims come in, you want to summarize and say, what are the top 3 opportunities for improvement? So it came back with, a text-based description to me that helps give me that clue of what to do. Now, this capability has been rolled out for quite a while. One of the common things that people run into is they want to do even more. They want even larger data sets, and they want to add a column with a sentiment or a theme. That's coming. It is not yet released, but just to let you know. And so this is where you can see these columns. B is the formula that has a recent date in it. And column C is a formula that randomly shows one of 6 different strings because I created this in a way that I wanted to give to folks at Microsoft who work with customers so that they can customize it for the customers to show the names of their departments so that when they see the context of how to use this in Excel, they're seeing their own terminology and knowledge from their internal organization as part of it, which helps contextualize it, right? And I'm kind of running out of time, so I'm going to keep speeding along. Charts I talked about earlier, again, simple data set to illustrate the idea, a list of tasks, percentage of time I spend. Here I've asked for create a column chart showing video games versus laundry. So 2 things happening here. One is I said column chart, so I told it what kind of chart. Second is I said showing, and I gave it the 2 values. So it creates a filter. And if I were to click add to a new sheet, this is now a pivot chart. So it's connected to my data and it is live and refreshable. So as the data evolves, this can evolve. But the preview here lets me know what it's going to look like before I add it. Now, a more complex real world example, I have a series of dates and transaction and sales in different counties in the state of Washington. So in the middle, you'll see show sales volume by county. And so it decided in this case that a bar chart was the right way to do it. So you can see that there's clearly one outlier. I think it's King in this data set that has the largest amount. Or if I want to ask for a pivot table, create a table grouping sales by county, and then it's summarizing the number of sales in those counties. So now moving on to search, you will hear the terms web grounding or enterprise grounding. Web just means search the web. Enterprise means search the organization. So just internal terminology there. So I asked for search the web, create a table with top 10 selling movies in 2024, including revenue and number of theaters. Now, comparing it to the chart on the previous one, I'm basically asking for a filter here. Oh, I want the movies that were top 10, but only in 2024, and here's what columns. But in this case, it is searching the web versus my own data. Key thing to know when you're using any of the search capabilities is that it'll have citations. So this lets you know what is the source of this information, so you can have confidence that the source is what you want for the context of what you're asking. You also see at the bottom those LLM-powered suggestion pills that are giving you ideas for prompts about what you can do. And then if you were to click insert a new sheet, it's going to create that data set in Excel for you. In this case, you'll notice that the revenue column, because of how Excel has default handling, it converted that to, it says in billions, and it makes it, fewer significant digits. But of course, you can change that because the underlying data is what the preview showed you. Another simple example here, but just a broader capability, would be search the web, create a table with the top 10 US cities by population, and include an interesting fact about each city. And so again, you can click on the citations to see where the data source is coming from, and you can insert in your workbook and go from there. So again, search the web, get stuff, bring it into Excel. And that first slide up front, I showed all the different tabs and features. Think of all the ways you can have external connections and data connected to Excel. Now, if you're an Excel expert user, like you're very familiar with things like Power Query and this, cool, use those, that's great. But if you're not, or you're doing something kind of quick and dirty and you just want to oh gosh, what's a good itinerary? Where should I start for my trip to UK? This can be a really great way to kind of start your brainstorming, start your thinking, start collecting information. And then actually, I think I'll be on time here, but I unfortunately won't have time for questions, although I could stay a little bit late. The last feature in this is what's called clean data. This has been in the web client for a while. It's going to start rolling out soon for the Windows client. And this is another scenario that happens to Excel users all the time. Working in a data set, especially if multiple people are adding to it, over time, it starts to drift and get a little bit inconsistent. And if you don't have your cell content entered consistently, it kind of makes it a pain to use other features like sorting or filtering. So in this case, I have a workbook that has a location column, and you can see that USA is sometimes U.S.A, sometimes it's uppercase, sometimes it's in lowercase. And if you're trying to get one view of all the locations in the USA, it's hard to do that with the way it's formatted. So clean data, when you open your workbook, scans for a list of possibilities with Copilot, and it says, hey, I found some suggestions for you. And when you click on that Show Suggestions button, over on the right, you'll see what you see. It has found the inconsistencies in how USA is formatted. It's giving you an option, who's the winner, pick the winner, and it gives you that coloring that tells you, oh, this is the cells that have that value on it, and you can click that. Two quick more examples, and then the last slide is just a list of links. More things you can do with clean data. These are the types of issues that it could detect and fix. It's really common to have inconsistent formatting where there's extra or missing character or space for the same value. This data set's a list of cities, but some of them have the appropriate diacritic and others don't. Clean data found that, and it has suggestions, and when you hover over it, it gives you the preview. And another example of the same type of pattern is inconsistent text. So sometimes I have parentheses around the number of weeks, and other times I don't. It could detect that pattern and give you one-click access to clean it and suggest the fix for you. And then your workbook is more consistent, and now you can work with it. And I made it, and I talked really, really fast. I'm sorry, but there was a lot. 2 links here for reference. Number 1 on the left, the Excel team has a blog that we in the product team create, and especially around in the fall when we were removing the preview tag, we did daily posts for a month where we just said, here's some ways to use it. So there's tons of examples there. And the second link on the right is a PowerPoint deck with a ton more examples of capabilities there. Now, not everything in that PowerPoint is available in EDU SKUs, so there's some limitations to be aware of, but it's a really, really good left to right resource. We update it every few months. There's slides, they all have the right alt text, and there's notes pane with talk track and things like that. So it could be a really, really good way to kind of see more of the breadth of possibilities. Okay, sorry for talking so fast. Now I can stop.
You fast talk.
Wow.
You thought that was killer. Take that drink of water. You deserve it. That was incredible, y'all. I will get this posted ASAP. I will not walk away from the computer so that you can have that. I mean, I feel like I have one hot tip or hot tip with Hecox, and it's not even going to come anywhere close to the beauty that you just shared. Mine is Dwayne, if you can show the little tiny bit that we've got left just to give people some information. The presentation, somebody's asking where it's going to get posted. It's going to go on our YouTube channel. So we will get you, that link is in the chat already, but we will get you there. Yeah, like I said, there's no way to really top that, but thank you. Oh, no, I'm not doing the music. Sorry, got to go forward. Okay, so I'm going to keep it really fast because we are near the end of time and we have a couple of things that we need. But hot tips with Hecox, okay? So this is about laziness and or you weren't paying attention. I'm not claiming that I've actually done that ever. I'm always paying attention. I'm always listening to every word that is said in every meeting. However, should I show up late to a call? Should I potentially zone out? Should I be multitasking? I want you to know that there are some benefits of having Copilot. So actually, one of the things that I always hate, and I don't know if y'all were like this in school or even in a meeting, but thank you for the hat compliment, is if I ever do somehow, like I get distracted or I miss something that is said, I then don't want to ask a question because I'm terrified that somebody's already asked it. And then when I go and ask it, it's going to absolutely let everybody know she was not listening to a single thing that was said. So I went to go do that in a meeting the other day, like ask a question. And this is exactly the question. I was ready to say, did he already talk about security being a prerequisite? And so I instead went to Copilot, asked Copilot because we had it running, we had it recording in the transcription. I asked that question and they were like, yeah, he definitely already talked about it. So I was like, saved myself the embarrassment of announcing to everybody that I did not hear him and had tuned out. So just, a little hot tip, quick thing. I know we need Copilot for productivity, but I thought I'd give you the on the sly, like here's some way to help you out if you need it. So
Hey, Heather, quick
maybe just
question.
use that. Yeah.
This is a good one over here. Does the meeting have to be recorded in order for you to use Copilot?
Um, my Copilot friend, yeah, we have to have the,
Transcription.
y'all tell me. Yeah, the
Yep.
transcription at least has to be going, correct?
Correct.
There's
You
a
have
way to
have
do without
transcription.
it, but yes, by
Ooh.
default, you need to have the transcription going.
Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. So that it won't, yeah, so that's something to keep in mind. Most of our, like at least internally, most of our big meetings, we have them recorded for folks because schedules are so busy, but keep that in mind. Also, next meeting, it's still golf club. Probably won't wear this outfit. Oh, but my husband came home. He brought me his pass and he got a flag. So he is back and he brought me he's going to keep the flag. I don't need the flag, but he did let me have his pass so that I could complete my outfit. So we will see you on April 22nd. This one will get posted, the other one won't, but we're going to have you vote. You don't have to vote now because I didn't get a poll ready. We're already over time, but we did not pick a theme for May. So here's what we're leaning towards. We've got 4 options. We've got book club, cooking club, Lego club, and drama club. That was from Will and Copilot and his children. They helped us come up with some options. So those are the ones. Emily, we might need to hang out because she's drama club. She loves Taylor Swift. Emily and I are probably friends in another life here. But you can throw them in the chat, but look at Jose. Jose, we're besties too. He's got Taylor Swift. Okay, we'll put a little poll out. We'll let y'all vote so that we can create it. Remember, those images were all created by Copilot. It's all about the power of the prompt. But Casey did such a great job. Thank you again for being here. This was awesome. Like awesome. We'll get it posted as soon as humanly possible. They try to time me sometimes, but it's only as fast as the recording wants to process. So, we will get that out, but y'all are amazing. I will fully kick you out so that nobody who did decide to multitask and walked away is left hanging out in the meeting. So we will see you. The whiskey club, was that what I was saying? The Jameson Club? Yeah.
That's an after
Those,
5 p.m. club.
yeah,
Click on the
those are
link in
after
chat if you
5
want the
p.m. You
click on
know?
the link in chat if you want the bonus Excel song.
Oh, yeah. And then we're putting
Nice.
that on the album.
Then we're click.
So, you know. Bye,
Have a good one,
everybody.
guys.
We will
Bye.
see you in 2 weeks.